latest booms. We're not sure exactly where they're landing. This is really the most serious confrontation we've seen between these two countries in well over a decade. It's a long-standing border dispute that has flared up occasionally in the past, but not as seriously as this since way back. And I think it really came out of the blue for many Thais. It started with a few clashes earlier this year, but then there was a serious deterioration in relations last month when the Cambodian strongman, as he calls himself, Hun Sen, the former leader, leaked a conversation between him and the Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra, which deeply embarrassed her and resulted in her suspension by the Constitutional Court. There's been a really strong war of words since then between the two sides. We've seen the troops beginning to mass a little bit on the border, and then we've had these quite really serious clashes that have happened today that have resulted in quite a number of civilian deaths, a lot of injuries as well, quite a bit of damage. Now at the moment there's no sign of any real diplomatic efforts going on to de-escalate that. We'll have to see if that happens in the next few days or so. The troops who are here and right along this border on the Thai side are really on high alert.
Jonathan Head reporting from the Thai-Cambodia border. Police in Northern Ireland have named the mother and two children that were shot dead in County Fermanagh. They were 45-year-old vet Vanessa White, her son James, who was 14, and her 13-year-old daughter Sarah. Our Ireland correspondent Chris Page has this report.
There's devastation, numbness and grief in this part of the countryside. It's become a crime scene after a mother and her two children were killed with a gun. Vanessa White was a veterinary surgeon and was 45. The other victims were her son James Rutledge, who was 14, and her 13-year-old daughter Sarah Rutledge. Paramedics and police were called to their home by someone inside.
The alarm was raised, I believe, by a phone call made from the house. So as you can appreciate, it's a very harrowing scene for all involved. So not only police officers, but colleagues in the ambulance service and, family members.
A fourth member of the household, a man, was airlifted to hospital in Belfast, where he's being treated for serious injuries. Police say one line of inquiry is that this was a triple murder and an attempted suicide. It may take some time for detectives to find out all the facts about what happened here. But what is unmistakable at this stage is the sense of disbelief in this community.
This is a very rural farming community, a small village where indeed everyone will know each other. They'll have grown up together, the young ones will go to school together. So the whole entire village is affected, and indeed the surrounding area, by the news.
Two Gaelic sports clubs in the area have said Vanessa White and her children were active and beloved members. Sarah and James went to Enniskillen Grammar School, which has paid tribute to them as vibrant and much valued pupils. People in County Fermanagh are sure to come together in the coming days to support those most affected by an unimaginable tragedy.
Chris Page reporting. Rescuers have reached the site where a Russian passenger plane came down, but they say they have found no survivors. The twin-propeller Antonov had made one attempt to land at Tinder, that's a place close to the border with China in the Far East. It was making a second approach when it went down in a heavily forested mountain area. 49 people were on board. Russia's state news agency is reporting the plane was nearly 50 years old and had suffered several previous malfunctions. A British teenager, Bella Cully, has appeared in court in Georgia charged with drug smuggling. The 19-year-old was arrested at Tbilisi International Airport in May, carrying 12 kilos of marijuana and 2 kilos of hashish. She's claimed she was coerced into carrying the drugs. The proceedings have been adjourned until September. Our Europe correspondent James Waterhouse is outside the court in Tbilisi.
Well, Bella Cully's family hoped today would mark a plea agreement where she would admit guilt for a lesser sentence, like a suspended sentence or fine. That has not materialised. This was a half-hour hearing. That started off with a moment of joy for Bella's mum, Leanne, when she learnt the gender of Bella's unborn baby. But then that was quickly replaced with anxiety when prosecutors repeated the charges against her. They argued that she was a flight risk and should not be released, and the hearing has been postponed for now until September, unless you sense some kind of plea deal can be reached beforehand. The charges against Bella are serious, smuggling more than 14 kilograms of cannabis into Georgia, a country with very strict drug laws. And Bella, in her case, if convicted, could face up to 20 years or even life in prison. Nevertheless, you sense that negotiations are going on, and we'll learn in a few weeks' time what is next for this 19-year-old.
James Waterhouse in Tbilisi. 2 people have died in a wildfire outside Cyprus's second city of Limassol, fanned by strong winds and temperatures that were forecast to reach 44 degrees Celsius on Thursday. Health authorities said another 2 people were admitted to hospital with severe burns, while another 16 were treated for less serious injuries. Football, and England's Lionesses are preparing for a rematch of the 2023 World Cup final as they look to retain their European title on Sunday. The defending champions will once again play Spain, and they are hoping for a different result this time around, as Andy Swiss reports.
Here we go again. After their semi-final celebrations, it's now Spain against England once more. Another showdown for another major trophy. 2 years ago, they met in the World Cup final, where England were outplayed and outclassed. But while Spain triumphed that time, England insist revenge is not on their minds.
I think as a football player you can become too emotional, and I think if you're trying to pull on that too much, then you're going to be, too emotional and too many things going on. And I think for us it's a new game. There's respect between the teams and they play incredible football, and we know that we do on our day as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting game, and hopefully it's a good one for the fans to watch.
And if those England fans need any optimism, well, Spain weren't entirely convincing last night, but come extra time, a reminder of their fluency and their finishing. Aitana Bonmati has been named the world's best player for the past 2 years. Remarkably, just days before the tournament, Bonmati was in hospital with viral meningitis. Now she's taken Spain to the final, and she's ready for England.
They have a lot of players that we face them a lot of times in 2023 in World Cup. We knew them, they know us, so we want to prepare the best at the game for going to win it.
But England are a side who just don't know when they're beaten. After those chaotic comebacks against Sweden and against Italy, well, they believe anything is possible.
Obviously we come in every tournament and we want to reach the final. Maybe the way we've done it is a little bit more stressful for everyone, but I think that's kind of the beauty of this team, is that we are relentless and we've got belief in ourselves that even in the 90th minute we can get a goal and we can win. And yeah, I think that's what's really special about us at the minute.
And they are, of course, the reigning European champions. But if 2022 was something, this year's rollercoaster ride could yet be even more remarkable. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
Should be a good one. If you are a keen subscriber to health apps and wearable devices, then here's some good news for you, particularly if you're struggling to reach the requisite 10,000 steps. There's a new global study that's been published in the Lancet Health Journal which suggests 7,000 steps would suffice and would probably deliver you the same health benefits. That means a risk of heart disease as well as dementia, depression and type 2 diabetes. Opening bell coming up in New York. Do stay with us. Business news ahead. We'll be right back.
Now on BBC News, the latest from New York and around the world. Business Today.
Live from New York at the opening bell, this is Business Today. A mixed start at the open with the Nasdaq edging higher, boosted by results from Google owner Alphabet. And touchdown in London, Narendra Modi rubber stamps the UK-India trade deal. We'll break down all the numbers. Plus, both targets of Trump's tariffs. EU and China meet for key trade talks as Beijing says the country is keen to strengthen economic ties. Also, beef is back on the menu. Australia lifts a 20-year US beef ban as it looks to strike a tariff deal with the White House. Welcome to Business Today, live from New York. I'm Michelle Fleury, and we begin with new signs of progress on the trade front. US and European Union officials are inching closer to a possible trade deal following the White House's recent agreement with Japan. We'll have more on that in a moment. But right now, it is corporate earnings making headlines on Wall Street. A strong report from Google's parent company, Alphabet, is lifting the Nasdaq, though gains are being held back by weaker results from IBM and Tesla. And in the last hour, United Health has confirmed it is under a Department of Justice investigation over Medicare billing. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is keeping pressure up on Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. He's set to visit the Fed's $2.5 billion renovation project this afternoon, a price tag the president has criticised along with Mr. Powell's policies. For more on all of this, I'm joined by Jeff Grills, head of US cross markets and emerging markets debt at Aegon Asset Management. Good to see you this morning, Jeff. Look, I want to start with that Trump visit to the Fed. It's only the fourth time in history that we've seen a sitting president visit the Fed, so pretty unusual. How are the markets responding? What do they make of this?
Well, I think the market is going to take this in stride. They've seen the president going after the Fed, putting pressure on the FOMC to ease policy rates. And this is just another way that Trump likes to influence or to exert some pressure to try to hit the results that he wants. I think the market knows that the Fed has been very good at resisting a lot of the pressures. They've held steady. We don't expect them to ease policy rate probably till the end of this year, which we think is prudent. So I think it's more for show. This is the Fed. We expect to serve out the mandate, and when we get to next year, then the administration can put in the chairman of their choice at that point.
In Europe this morning, we've seen the ECB leave rates on hold at 2%, effectively joining the Federal Reserve in a pause. Does that bolster the Fed's position, do you think, on rates at a time when the president has been so critical, calling for more cuts, faster cuts?
I think the Fed again will be very independent relative to what the ECB has been doing. I mean, keep in mind that the ECB has already lowered their policy rate by 2% over the last year and a half. The U.S. Federal Reserve has only gone 1%. I think it just speaks to the nature of being more data dependent. The ECB did communicate that they are on hold now, watching data, waiting to see how tariffs will impact inflationary pressures. And to a certain extent, that's exactly what the U.S. Federal Reserve is doing today. Inflation is coming down. We do expect it to trend up a little bit. Tariffs will have a one-off impact as they continue to be implemented. I think we are going to get more certainty around where tariffs settle as we see some of these agreements between Japan, the Philippines, hopefully with the EU and China. And the Fed has been right to be on hold. It's nice that they have the firepower now to ease if we do get a slowdown.
I want to turn to results. We are in the middle of second quarter earnings season. Alphabet and Tesla, two of the big names in tech, reported last night, and it was a pretty mixed bag. How significant is that? What are you looking at next in that tech space?
Well, I think the Google results were very significant, right? They really point to the AI era that we're in and the gains that can be made both in tech and hopefully for AI with productivity. So I think the Google results were very positive, especially since there's been pressure on will they be able to maintain search and ad revenue. Tesla, I view more as a one-off. It's reacting to a combination of incentives coming off. To a certain extent, I think the pairing of Musk with the presidency early in the year maybe alienated a part of his buyer base. So again, to his point, I think they'll have a couple rough quarters. I think it's very isolated and not really an indicator of the economic view going forward, right? I think that's just Tesla having their Tesla problems. Google is very positive. We'll see how the rest of the tech industry does, but I do anticipate that AI and tech will continue to drive gains in the market.
The AI story continues. Jeff Grills from Aegon Asset Management in Chicago. Thanks for joining us. Now, it's not just the United States inking trade deals. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer have officially signed an agreement. Last year, trade between the two countries hit just over £42 billion, and the British government is hoping the agreement will boost overall trade by 60% over the next 15 years. Downing Street says the deal is worth £6 billion in new investment and exports and will create over 2,200 British jobs across the country, as well as to allow more imports of cheaper goods from India, including clothing, footwear and food. Alpesh Patel, Chief Executive of Prafinium Partners, explained why the deal was a big win for the UK.
I'm so incredibly excited about this because for the last 25 years, I've been personally involved 25 years ago on the UK-India Roundtable, and we could not get the Indians to move. So kudos to the government to be able to do that. It is one of the most protectionist economies in the world. For the British to have opened up the Indian economy, not since the days of the empire has it been this open to the British, because of those high tariffs the Indians put. And most importantly, Britain is a service economy. So for us to be able to access the Indian service sector in the world's fourth largest economy, which is growing at between 6 to 8% per annum, really the message to British businesses is get out there and start selling, because your goods and services are cheaper than they've ever been for Indians, so they want to buy more of them. That is phenomenal. I never thought I'd see it in my lifetime.
Alpesh Patel there. Now, here in the United States, President Donald Trump suggested that he would not go below 15% as he set so-called reciprocal tariffs ahead of an August 1st deadline. Japan negotiated 15% tariffs this week. That was after they were facing a possible 25% rate. Earlier this month, US President Donald Trump threatened a 30% tariff on EU imports, but talks are ongoing on a deal ahead of that deadline that I mentioned, and EU members are also pressing ahead with countermeasures to be prepared in case a trade deal isn't finalised with the US before that deadline next week. There are reports the two parties are closing in on an agreement that could bring proposed tariffs down to 15%. Meanwhile, European Council President Antonio Costa and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen are meeting counterparts in Beijing. European differences with both China and the United States are sizable, as David Waddell reports.
The European Union's top leaders arrive in Beijing for the latest EU-China summit, 50 years on from when diplomatic relations were first established between Brussels and Beijing. In a plenary session, President Xi suggested that China and the European Union have no fundamental conflicts of interest and that the current challenges facing the EU do not come from China. He called on the EU to keep its trade and investment markets open. There is friction, though. The EU suffers a €400 billion trade deficit with China, and Brussels is deeply concerned about how China is restricting access to rare earth metals important in a wide range of manufacturing applications. Meanwhile, top European leaders are focused on whether a tariff deal can be struck with the United States, with just over a week to run before tariffs are hiked on the 1st of August. It's complicated. 27 nations need to work together.
The aim is to achieve real convergence between us and, of course, with the President of the European Commission, so that we can finalize a tariff issue as quickly and as effectively as possible.
If the deal can't be done, the European Commission now says it will hit over $100 billion of US goods with counter-tariffs from August 7th. But Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz said he'd been hearing about the possibility of an imminent deal. It could yet be tricky. President Trump seems temperamentally ill-disposed to the EU due to its big trade surplus with the United States and what he regards as a heavy-handed regulatory regime, which hurts some big American tech firms. David Waddell, BBC News.
Well, let's get more with Ayana Dreyer, founder and editor of Borderlex, a European trade policy publication. Ayana, good to see you today. The timing of this meeting between Chinese and EU officials, how significant is that ahead of that August 1st deadline for the US?
Well, the meeting is largely ceremonial. It has to do with the establishment of 50 years of diplomatic relations. There is obviously, it's been an attempt at a form of rapprochement between the two in the context of sour relations between the US and China, but this is not actually working the way both sides would want it. There actually in the EU, there's growing misgivings about a lot of Chinese trade practices. It's continued overcapacities in a range of sectors, a sense that there is coercion on individual member countries, and this compounded by the fact that it is perceived as supporting Russia in its war against Ukraine, which is a existential issue for the EU. So this meeting was mainly there to keep channels open and to make sure that that the two sides this doesn't get out of hand and there's no escalation,
right.
But there's no positive outcome.
Ayana, I mean, I want to talk to you about the US. Obviously, EU officials sounding upbeat at the moment, 15% is what they're hoping to get, but it still needs to be signed off by Donald Trump, and we've seen he can be quite mercurial.
That is absolutely right. This is a deal that was hashed out by able technicians on both sides of the Atlantic. A lot depends on, indeed, the whim of the US president. And until the 1st of August, in these days, a lot can happen. I think also if there is a deal, this is not the end of it. It will be the beginning of a long process of continued haggling. We will have headline figures, headline announcements, but this is no treaty. We will not know exactly, how long the US will commit to its tariff rate, what exactly it will continue asking from the EU. What is more, they will not have resolved future tariffs in critical sectors for the EU, such as semiconductors, aircraft, copper, pharmaceuticals, there might be some initial talk about it now.
Sectoral tariffs.
Yes, there are investigations in the United States that could lead to, very high tariffs, 25, 50%
right.
on those kind of products. So it's not over. It would be, if there's a deal, it would only be at the beginning of a process.
Ayana Dreyer, founder and editor of Borderlex. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just before we go, a reminder, the market's right now looking mixed. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ both higher. Some strong earnings results lifting particularly the NASDAQ. And that is all we have time for here on Business Today. Stay with us on BBC News. And whatever you're doing, be profitable.
The BBC was always on in the Mashiri house, and my dream actually was to be a BBC News presenter. I want to be for others what the BBC was for us, a trusted source of stability and hope. For me, trust is about presence, about fostering relationships all around the world over years. So when a story breaks, we're not chasing a lead, we're already there. I'm Marianne Mashiri on The World Today for BBC News.
Hello and welcome along. We start today with cricket because it's been an action-packed second day of the fourth test between England and India. India have been bowled out for 358, with Jofra Archer and Ben Stokes doing damage for England. Captain Stokes managing his first 5-wicket haul in 8 years. Rishabh Pant, despite being badly injured on day one, managed his half-century before being bowled by Archer. England are 12 without loss in reply and lead the 5-match series 2-1. Well, the build-up to Sunday's Women's Euros final between England and Spain is very much underway. The two sides met in the World Cup final 2 years ago, a match that Spain won 1-0. England's Keira Walsh knows the opposition better than most after having spent 3 years at Barcelona, but the midfielder insists that friendships are on pause until after Sunday's final.
I speak to Jana Fernandez quite a lot. We're good friends, and yeah, obviously I've got a few friends from Barcelona as well, but yeah, she was just texting me saying about our last 2 games, and you know, she said that she's happy for us that we're in the final. Obviously, as I said, there's a lot of respect between the two teams, and yeah, I think obviously I've got friends, but it's a final and we want to win, and yeah, after the game we'll go back to being friends, but yeah, right now we're rivals.
The British and Irish Lions have announced their team for the second test against Australia, and over half of them are from Ireland. In all, there are 3 changes to the starting lineup, with Ireland's Bundy Aki and Andrew Porter getting the nod this time, along with England's Ollie Chessum. But Irish centre Gary Ringrose withdrew after feeling the effects of concussion in training. Andy Farrell's son Owen will be on the replacements bench in the first ever test match to be held at the famous MCG in Melbourne, where a Lions win would wrap up the series after they won the first test in Brisbane.
It's a different week again for us, which is good. At this stage of the tour, it's good to just change things up a little bit, and you know what we've tried to do is keep the whole squad together the whole way through, and we've managed our week a little bit differently. So we train on a Thursday where we're normally used to training on a Wednesday, and we've adapted pretty well to that, and everyone's been out there today and ready for an abbreviated captain's run tomorrow. I'm ready for what is going to be a huge occasion on Saturday.
It's a huge opportunity. It's a huge privilege for us to play there in what will be an amazing stadium and what will be an amazing crowd. If it reaches full capacity, it will definitely be the biggest stadium that I've played in. So it's something that we're looking to relish.
England's women have announced their squad for next month's Rugby World Cup, with Zoe Aldcroft named as the captain. Scrum half Natasha Hunt has been picked 3 years after her surprise omission from the team that finished runners-up in 2022. Also included in John Mitchell's squad of 32 for the home tournament is Emily Scarrett, who's set to become the first English rugby union player to appear at 5 World Cups. England open the tournament against the USA on the 22nd of August. Well, former world champion Lizzie Deignan has announced her immediate retirement from cycling, confirming that she's pregnant with her 3rd child. Deignan, who is one of Britain's most successful road cyclists, said that she'd retire from the sport at the end of this season. She's now brought forward the decision because of her pregnancy. Deignan won the World Championships in 2015 and silver in 2012 at the Olympics, in addition to 43 professional race wins. In tennis, top seed Taylor Fritz is into the last 16 of the Washington Open, where he plays Italy's Matteo Arnaldi later on. The American booked his place in the last 16 with a straight sets win over world number 48 Alexander Vukic, beating the Australian 6-3, 6-2. That's all the sport for now. It's back to you in London.
Rebecca, thank you for that. Just want to bring you a line of breaking news, which is coming from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I told you earlier in the programme that his negotiator Ron Dermer was due to meet Steve Witkoff in Sardinia in Italy today. The Israelis are saying that they are recalling their negotiating team to Israel for consultations. That comes a day after Hamas handed its response on the supposed 60-day ceasefire to the mediators. There are still thought to be key disagreements that remain over the distribution of aid and the maps detailing Israel's withdrawal. They currently have around 70% control in Gaza. The talks, which were aimed at progressing a deal, may still take place between the US and Israeli side. There is one line from a senior Hamas source quoted by Reuters who said it could take a few days yet because of what they called Israeli stalling. The source said Hamas's response to the ceasefire proposal includes a clause that would prevent Israel from resuming the war if an agreement was not reached within the 60-day truce period. So it does appear that what comes next after that 60-day pause is really the sticking point in the negotiations. We'll bring you more news on that over the course of the next few hours. Let's turn to Haiti. In the capital, Port-au-Prince, the gangs now control around 90% of the city. The police are outnumbered and outgunned, and government authority has all but collapsed. As in many conflicts, it's women and children who are suffering the most. Our correspondent, Nawal Al-Maghafi, has had rare access to the streets of Port-au-Prince. Her report does contain upsetting images, and the names of those interviewed in her report have been changed to protect their identities.
We're in a safe house in the suburbs of Port-au-Prince, home to dozens of young women and girls, exposed far too early to the cruelty of mankind. This girl is a survivor of rape.
We've come here to interview women who are victims of sexual violence, but I'm blown away by how young they are. Young girls holding on to babies. The youngest victim of rape is 12 years old, and the eldest is only 19.
Helene was 17 when she was captured. She's now 19 years old and a single mother.
They raped and beat me. Sometimes I think about ending it all. They made me do things and said they'd kill me if I didn't agree. But then I fell pregnant and they told me to abort the pregnancy, but I said no. This baby could be the only one I ever have.
Port-au-Prince is almost entirely controlled by the gangs, and rape has been a crucial weapon used to terrorize and subjugate entire communities.
Port-au-Prince is the worst place in the world to be a woman. Why? Because the violence is around you. The women have to flee their houses. They flee without nothing. They are in centers where there is no water, no sanitation, they are overcrowded, and they suffer from direct violence because they are exposed, both in the centers as well as in the streets, to the men that are attacking them because they are powerless to defend themselves.
At another women's shelter across town, we hear more distressing testimony. A pattern emerges of rape, murder and arson.
They raped me. I had my 6-year-old with me. They raped her too. Our neighborhood was ambushed. I went back home only to find my mom, my dad, my sister. All were murdered.
This is Delmas 30, the scene of a recent gang attack. Women were raped, families murdered. An entire neighborhood is now in ruins. Rodrigue is going back for the first time and taking us with him.
So the gangs are stationed about 2 blocks away, and we're going into Rodrigue's neighborhood, which is still contested territory. We're being escorted by vigilantes. They are basically civilians who are trying to keep the neighborhood safe. They're filling in the security vacuum. All right, they're ready for us to go in. Let's go.
The vigilantes signal to snipers on the roof of a nearby bank. They're protecting the area to keep the gangs from returning, and they are close. It's a maze of alleyways. At every open space, we have to run to avoid being spotted by the gangs. Finally, we reach the ruins of Rodrigue's home.
Follow him up there.
This is my bedroom. This is the kids' room. We had a good life here. There were so many victims, people killed. They carried them out in wheelbarrows. People were hacked to death. So many victims.
The atmosphere is tense, and suddenly our visit is cut short.
So we've just heard some shooting, and we've been told that it's probably the snipers from the bank, but we're worried that the gangs may retaliate at any moment, so we're going to leave.
We're going deep into gang territory to meet Vag, a leader within the Vivan Sam coalition. They control most of the capital now.
I mean, look around you. People have been uprooted from their homes. Civilians have been killed. Women have been raped. Children have been murdered. Do you have any remorse?
When we're fighting, we are possessed. We are no longer human. We become the devil.
How many people have you killed?
Sometimes I kill people without even seeing them. They get shot and they die. Then we take their bodies and burn them. These chains I'm wearing belong to the people I've killed. Chains, rings, I take them and wear them to command the spirit of the dead.
This area is right on the front line. The gangs are just a few hundred meters down the street. Vigilantes stand guard, protecting their territory.
We're not gonna let them come here and kill us. Steal everything we have, burn cars, burn houses, kill kids. They don't care, they kill anything. You know what I'm saying? So we're not gonna quit.
The gunshots are getting really close. They made me jump, but when I look around, everyone looks really calm, and it's because of how used to it they are.
As Haiti continues to battle itself, its people are desperate for some relief, longing for a life of peace and not just survival. Noel El-Makhafi, BBC News, Haiti.
You're watching BBC News.
So usually these lakes are all covered with snow by the time the water freezes. I think what was so special about this ice is that because it's up in the Alpine, it's up in the mountains, the lake bottom doesn't have any vegetation, and it's rock instead of soil. And so the water is really clear.
Original global stories from the BBC.
Live from London, this is BBC News. The UN warns the hunger crisis in Gaza has never been so dire, with a surge in deaths linked to malnutrition.
We've come to a disastrous situation. It's not that we are close to famine, we are living it.
The Wall Street Journal reports that Donald Trump is named multiple times in files relating to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The UK signs its biggest trade deal since Brexit with India, worth over £6 billion. And Thailand launches airstrikes on Cambodian military targets in a dramatic escalation of a border dispute. At least 12 people are reported dead. We'll have the latest.
Really serious clashes that have happened today that have resulted in quite a number of civilian deaths, a lot of injuries as well, quite a bit of damage. Now, at the moment, there's no sign of any real diplomatic efforts going on to de-escalate that.
Hello, welcome to today's Verified Live. We start with the alarming situation in Gaza. One doctor told the BBC, Palestinians are not close to famine, we are living it, she said. The World Health Organization described the situation as mass starvation that was man-made and blamed Israel. Over 100 aid organisations, medics on the ground and 28 European capitals have demanded an immediate ceasefire and for the UN to be allowed to flood the Gaza Strip with humanitarian aid. Israel, backed by the US, continues to insist they are not blocking the deliveries of vital supplies. Here's our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Knell.
This is what a hunger crisis looks like. This South Gaza hospital is overwhelmed by rising numbers of malnourished babies and children. Despite the immense needs in Gaza, still only a trickle of aid is getting in. Dignity is forgotten at soup kitchens as crowds jostle for food. Children with empty stomachs reaching out for a meagre ration of thin lentil soup. Isn't this sinful? We're dying from hunger, this father says. It's enough, enough, enough. Gaza's once bustling markets are now empty. Even those with money now say they go days without food. Yet hundreds of lorry loads of supplies are tantalisingly close. This week, Israeli authorities put out drone footage showing goods they allowed to enter Gaza. They blame international agencies for delays in collecting it from border crossings. But as hostilities continue, the UN says it faces logistical challenges and it wants more guarantees from Israel that its forces won't shoot at hungry people rushing to get life-saving aid. Every day, funerals are taking place in Gaza. Children were among those killed in the latest Israeli airstrikes. The struggle to survive takes many forms. Yolande Knell, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, let's hear from one medic from the UK medical charity. Dr. Asil described to the BBC the levels of starvation she was seeing all around her and also talked about trying to get aid, which she described as a one-way ticket to death.
We have to continue what we're doing and to support people and condole them and tell them to be patient, while in fact we desperately need these words and support. No matter how I tell you all day long, I won't be able to describe to you the suffering of people. They are tired, they are fed up of the current situation. We've come to a disastrous situation. It's not that we are close to famine, we are living it. My husband went once to an aid distribution point and twice and then got shot, and that was it. If we are to die from hunger, let it be. The path to aid is a path to death. It's a treacherous road. It's a one-way ticket in some cases. I see the injured people who come to the hospital in big numbers. We sometimes receive up to 50 people injured a day.
Well, that was just one doctor speaking to the BBC on the ground. Let's speak live now to the Executive Director of the World Peace Foundation, Alex de Waal. And Alex, welcome here to BBC News. You have been studying starvation, famine for over 40 years. Tell me briefly, first of all, your assessment of what we're actually seeing.
So just as a physician doesn't need to do all the blood tests, run all the tests in order to diagnose someone who is very obviously suffering a disease, anyone who has been a humanitarian worker knows this is famine, regardless of what the data say. When you get to this stage of absolute desperation and social breakdown and people doing anything they can to get food, this is famine.
And to be clear, a famine that you think is totally man-made?
Well, almost all famines are man-made. What is unique about this one is that the international agencies are standing by with the capacity, the resources, the expertise and the plans, and they are not being allowed to implement those plans. If Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wanted every child in Gaza to have breakfast tomorrow, he could do it. A year ago, when there was polio in Gaza, and Israel was concerned that the polio might spread to Israel, they managed within days, in collaboration with the World Health Organization, to get 95% of Gaza's children vaccinated. They can do it. They are just deciding not to do it.
You told the Guardian newspaper, in terms of it being man-made, it was minutely engineered, closely monitored and precisely designed. Despite the denials, you think that is what Israel is doing here?
That's correct. They are under a legal obligation. Some 16 months ago, the International Court of Justice gave a very clear order of the type of humanitarian assistance, the full spectrum of assistance that was required in order for Israel to fulfill its obligation to prevent genocide. The question of accountability for genocide can wait. The question of preventing genocide through starvation cannot wait. And the Israeli judge on the court, Aharon Barak, voted for that measure. And yet it is not being implemented as of now. And Israel is repeatedly firing on aid workers, on aid distribution points. It has set up its own parallel system at which foreseeable, predictable chaos, including killings, including suffocation, people being killed in stampedes, is occurring. And not only that, but that we all know that in these situations of social breakdown and chaos, it is the armed men who are the last to starve. So if Israel wants Hamas or armed gangsters not to get their hands on food, they have two alternatives. They can either use the United Nations, which has its protocols and methods, not perfect, but the best we have, or it can do what it is doing, which is engineering the type of societal breakdown which ensures that whatever rations are available will be seized by the men with guns. So if the aim is to starve Hamas, this is self-defeating, this is nonsensical.
I know this will be distressing for people watching, but as I say, you have looked at situations like this in other countries, but just describe, would you, what people actually go through when we're talking about this level of starvation?
So there's the biology of starvation. There's the way in which lack of basic nutrients forces the body, weaponizes the body against itself, consumes fat and the essential organs, and actually affects the brain too. And for children, this is much more rapid than for adults. Adults can survive 60 to 80 days of outright starvation. Children, not so. And many of them will succumb not to starvation as such, but to infections that lead to that they're exposed to respiratory diseases, to diarrheal diseases, etc. Particularly acute where there is no good sanitation, no good water. And that is what carries them away. But equally traumatic, equally devastating is the societal impact, the sense of humiliation, of shame, of degradation, of humiliation, of being forced to scavenge in rubbish piles to get food, to steal food, to deny the most basic social obligations of giving food to your starving neighbors or cousins. And it's that deep trauma that stays with people for their lives, and in fact stays with people for generations. This is the reason why the great silence descended on Ireland after the Great Hunger of the 1840s, and it took more than 100 years before the Irish could publicly commemorate the starvation that they had undergone all those years ago. And that is the cauldron into which Gaza is being thrust today.
This time yesterday, we were seeing live pictures from the UN Security Council and certainly from Israel and the US. There was absolutely no sign of any sort of shift at all from the strategy that has been laid out. Again, I say you are the expert in this particular area. If we see another 4 weeks of this, 8 weeks of this, where does that actually take us in the end?
So one of the things that is so desperately familiar from the worst cases of starvation, such as those witnessed by Michael Burke and Mohammed Amin in northern Ethiopia, 40 years ago, that sparked Band-Aid, is there comes a point at which society collapses and death rates don't just creep up, they escalate. It becomes an exponential sort of spiral of immiseration. And this, I'm afraid, is what we are at the threshold of seeing now. And then it becomes much, much more difficult actually to provide the essentials, much more difficult to feed those children who are on the brink of death through starvation. You can't just give them pasta. You need to give them specialized therapeutic feeding. You need to restore the functioning of families. You need to get those basic services, clean water and sanitation, restored. And with every passing day, it gets more difficult, more challenging to put in place the basics for human survival.
Alex de Waal, we have to leave it there, but we are very grateful for your time, your thoughts. Thanks for joining us on BBC News.
Thank you very much.
And just a pointer, we have a live page running on the BBC website. Do head there. There has all the latest details. That doctor, we played the clip to you a short while ago describing what she is seeing all around her. There are numerous accounts from doctors, from dentists, from individuals just describing how they are surviving day to day. So head there for the very latest. It'll also update you on where we are with any sort of talk on a ceasefire. Now to other news, and India and Britain have signed a major trade deal that they say will lead to a multi-billion-dollar boost in exports for the two countries. The deal, agreed in May, is worth around £6 billion. This is the biggest trade deal the British government has signed since Brexit. And for India, the biggest agreement since they liberalised the economy in the 1990s. India is cutting tariffs on UK cars and whisky, and Britain will reduce import taxes for Indian textiles and jewellery. Well, the two leaders spoke after signing the deal today.
We both know this is the biggest and most economically significant trade deal that the UK has made since leaving the EU. And I think I can say that it's one of the most comprehensive deals that India has ever done. So thank you, Prime Minister, for your leadership and for your pragmatism, And I'd like to thank everybody who's worked so hard to get this deal over the line.
It is our commitment that from AI to critical minerals, semiconductors to cyber security, we shall create the future together.
Well, let's speak to Ali Renison, who's former Direct Policy Advisor to the UK Business and Trade Secretary of State. And thank you so much for being here with us. How significant do you think this deal is?
Well, I think that in terms of the UK's post-Brexit landscape, this is by far and away the biggest trade agreement in the arsenal in its basket currently. You have to look at simply by virtue of the fact that India is the fourth and soon to be the third largest economy in a couple of years in the world. The size of its market with a massively growing middle class, the ability to tap into that growing middle class and the demand for sort of high-value British goods and exports and services is a big, big deal. So I think in terms of looking at some of the trade barriers that India has in place, this is quite a considerable achievement.
For a long while, India has had at the top of its shopping list a relaxation on visa rules. Was there any movement in the UK's position on that?
No, I mean, ultimately, when you look at trade agreements, they're not about immigration policy. They're about sort of contractual service arrangements. No new visa routes were actually opened in terms of the numbers. Some of the professions were expanded, but in terms of the actual visa routes created, no, there was nothing new in there. Although we know that there is some political sensitivity around the national insurance exemptions for Indian temporary workers being sent here by their firms. But you have to remember, of course, that that's the default position for the first year for any temporary workers coming to the UK. That is not a labour mobility or migration issue.
We've all seen what Donald Trump is doing with tariffs and the impact on so many countries around the world. Do you get the sense that actually it is now perhaps becoming a driver to other countries making more deals?
I certainly think that India is one of many countries who are, while trying to negotiate with Donald Trump and the United States, they are looking at what they can do with the rest of the world. The UK government recently recommitted to a whole host of sort of continuing and new trade talks. We've seen Canada, which is not in that list, very keen to potentially restart talks with the United Kingdom. And I think that for India, this is an acceleration of a trend, perhaps sort of encouraged by events out of Washington, to try and open up to the rest of the world.
A brief final thought. Do you see from the early reading of this any downsides to a deal like this?
I think that there were fewer sensitivities in this deal. If you look at the agricultural sector, there weren't so many defensive interests. And interestingly, if you look at some of the things that we made moves on to concede to India, they're also in the UK's interest. So, for example, reducing our tariffs on textile imports for India. We don't really compete on the same kind of textiles as India. So that's a way to make British consumer goods and clothing actually cheaper in the end.
Ali Redison, we have to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us here on the programme. Well, still to come on today's Verified Live. In a moment or two, we'll get the latest from Washington on the reports that Donald Trump is named in files relating to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. We'll talk to CBS's White House correspondent. That's next here on today's programme. Around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News. Welcome back to today's Verified Live here on BBC News. Now, the White House has rejected reports that President Trump is among hundreds of names listed in US Justice Department documents about the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The Wall Street Journal has alleged that Donald Trump was told in May that he had been identified multiple times in the documents. Arunade Mukherjee reports now from Washington.
For nearly 2 weeks, the Jeffrey Epstein saga has consumed the White House in a way that the president doesn't want. Now the Wall Street Journal claims that the US Attorney General told Mr. Trump in May that his name appeared in Justice Department files about late convicted pedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. This has been rejected by the White House, and the BBC has not been able to independently verify the allegation. As pressure continues to mount on the president, a US judge has denied a bid to unseal grand jury material from the Epstein investigation. During his campaign last year, Trump, who at one time had been the financier's friend, promised to release files relating to the case, hoping to pacify those who have been seeking more information. But it wasn't to be.
Look, the president has made it clear that he wanted these documents to be declassified. He wanted the American people to see the truth, and now he wants those who perpetuated these lies and this scandal to be held accountable. As for what accountability looks like, as the director said, it's in the Department of Justice's hands, and we trust them to move this ball forward.
The attempt to draw a line under the case not going down well with many who have been loyal to Donald Trump.
President Trump is under an unprecedented amount of pressure right now. It's different from other controversies he's faced during his political career, because for the first time since he's gotten involved in politics over the last decade, we have seen that his conservative MAGA base appears to be splintering.
Polls suggest nearly 2/3 of Americans overall disapprove of his handling of the case. Meanwhile, the focus now also shifts to Epstein's longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. A convicted sex trafficker who is serving 20 years in prison for helping Epstein abuse young girls has been approached by the Justice Department for a meeting. She has also been subpoenaed to testify before a House of Representatives committee on the 11th of August. The more Donald Trump has urged people to move on from this case, the more it has remained in public discourse. Arunade Mukherjee, BBC News, Washington.
Well, let's speak to CBS's senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, who joins us live on the programme. Ed, welcome to today's Verified Live. This is quite a development from the Wall Street Journal, isn't it? Because the president was exactly asked this question on camera only a few days ago.
That's right. He was asked last week, were you briefed by your Attorney General that you were in the files? And he said, no, no, no. It was just a simple, very quick briefing. Now we find out, as first reported by the Wall Street Journal, that he was mentioned. But just because he's mentioned doesn't mean he did anything wrong, and shouldn't be surprising. We have plenty of video and pictures of the then businessman spending time with Epstein at various parties. They were friends. That relationship broke off, and as the White House likes to point out, Trump kicked Epstein out of the Mar-a-Lago club down in Florida for whatever reason. But it doesn't mean he was at all associated with the illegal and criminal things that Epstein had done, just that he's mentioned. There's video several years ago of Epstein in a deposition being asked, did you have a relationship with Donald Trump? And Epstein, yes, said we were friends, we were social. So not surprising. What it does do, though, is draw the president in closer to what is becoming now a bipartisan concern in this town, as Democrats and Republicans seek as much information, and all information, frankly, from the Justice Department that it's compiled since it first started investigating Jeffrey Epstein during the Bush administration earlier this century.
I suppose what it also does is underline what his critics, and there are now so many critics within the MAGA movement who are saying if he is not telling the truth in terms of a simple question and answer of last week, then perhaps potentially what is he hiding?
Right. That will certainly be a contributing factor. And it was telling that yesterday on Capitol Hill there were a handful of Republicans from mostly conservative parts of the country who voted with Democrats who were trying to make political hay out of this, to subpoena the Justice Department for everything, and then go forth and subpoena all these other people who have been associated with this, again, dating back to the Bush years. All the attorneys general that would have overseen the Justice Departments at the time, the Clintons, other people who knew Epstein. They're trying to catch everything now and look at it, in a completely bipartisan way, but they're not eliminating the possibility that the president may have done something wrong, and they're keeping that door open because they understand that there is broad public interest in this. Even if it doesn't rank as a top issue of concern, It has been a concern, a conversation starter, a point of contention for many of his supporters for several years, and he's helped drive that conversation, first as a candidate and then as president.
2 or 3 quick questions. Give us a sense of the deflection we've seen from the president. He wants to talk about just about all sorts of things. We had the Obama stuff only yesterday. I was reading one tweet where the person described it as the moment in a film where someone's being chased through the kitchen, pulling down pots and pans to slow down the chase. That's the stage we've got to with this presidency.
And he sent the director of national intelligence out yesterday with the biggest pan of all, the release of these documents that she unclassified last week, alleging, in her words, that the former President Obama helped oversee some kind of a coup to unseat or undermine then President-elect and then President Trump in 2017. This has been investigated by congressional committees in a bipartisan fashion. It was investigated for 3 years by the Justice Department. They never found any such allegations of wrongdoing and did not charge anyone in regards to those accusations. But for the sitting president and his intelligence director to allege that the former president led a coup is quite an extraordinary thing, but one that's been dismissed quite broadly by their critics and even, frankly, by many in the Republican Party, because you haven't seen them amplify the concerns around this as much as the White House might like. They've certainly tried to deflect, but it isn't necessarily working.
In terms of the Wall Street Journal, of course, Donald Trump is suing them over the publication of that birthday card letter. How interesting is it that despite that, they've dropped this story and presumably they may have other stories to come?
Well, it's a reminder that even amid legal threats from the president, news organizations in the United States soldier on. And whether it's the Wall Street Journal or other news outlets that have faced that, we continue to do that work. So not surprising that the threat of a lawsuit that he filed quite quickly would slow things down. We have no idea of knowing what the editing process was like for the Journal and how long it may have taken them to publish that story. But clearly it was the next development in this, yes. and they deemed it worthy of publication.
Yes, and it suggests that they are not backing down with all of this. Quick final thought, because the Deputy Attorney General, we are told, is going to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell, who we know the judge said lied profusely during that trial. How much worry is that some sort of shoddy deal is going to be made?
That concern has been raised because she is appealing her conviction to the Supreme Court. So it's still an open matter as to whether or not she serves the full 20 years that she was sentenced to. She's in a federal prison in Tallahassee. She's expected to speak with the number 2 at the Justice Department today. That man, Tad Blanche, is a familiar face to those who watched news footage last year because he was the president's personal attorney. In the hush money case, lots of questions about what he might ask and what he might not ask.
Ed O'Keefe, great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. We will have more of today's headlines here in just a moment or two. Don't go away. Welcome back to BBC News. Let's turn to our main headlines here. The UN warns the hunger crisis in Gaza has never been so dire, with a surge in deaths linked to malnutrition. The Wall Street Journal reports that Donald Trump is named multiple times in files relating to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Jeremy Corbyn confirmed the launch of a new political party with the former Labour MP Zara Sultana. And we take a look at the Lost Boys Task Force being set up by a coalition of youth charities to help ensure every vulnerable boy has a trusted adult mentor.
It's little things that will change your life forever. Like me getting robbed at knife point led me to carry a knife. I was lucky enough, I had a trusted adult.
Well, more on all of those stories coming up. Let's pause, let's catch up with the sports news. Rebecca is here, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Matthew. Well, we're starting with cricket because it's been an action-packed day at the fourth test, second day, between England and India at Old Trafford. India were bowled out for 358 with Jofra Archer and Ben Stokes doing the damage for England, and Captain Stokes managing his first 5-wicket haul in 8 years. Rishabh Pant, despite being badly injured on day one, managed his half a century before being bowled by Archer. England are currently 62 without loss and lead the 5-match series by 2-1. Well, the build-up to Sunday's Women's Euros final between England and Spain is very much underway. The two sides met in the World Cup final 2 years ago, a match that Spain won 1-0. England's Keira Walsh knows that the opposition better than most after having spent 3 seasons at Barcelona, but the midfielder insists that friendships are on pause until after Sunday's final.
I speak to Jana Fernandez quite a lot. We're good friends, and obviously I've got a few friends from Barcelona as well. But yeah, she was just texting me saying about our last 2 games, and she said that she's happy for us that we're in the final. Obviously, as I said, there's a lot of respect between the 2 teams, and yeah, I think obviously I've got friends, but it's a final and we want to win. And yeah, after the game we'll go back to being friends. But yeah, right now we're rivals.
Well, Newcastle United striker Alexander Isak wants to explore options for a move away from the club this summer, as they confirmed that he hasn't travelled with his teammates for their pre-season friendlies in Asia. That's due to a minor thigh injury. The Swedish international scored 23 goals in the Premier League last season, and a source has told BBC Sport that Liverpool are still interested in signing the 25-year-old. That's despite signing Frankfurt striker Hugo Ekitike for an initial £69 million on Wednesday. Newcastle have previously said that Isak is not for sale. Well, the British and Irish Lions have announced their team for the second test against Australia, and over half of them are from Ireland. In all, there are 3 changes to the starting lineup, with Ireland's Bundy Aki and Andrew Porter getting the nod this time, along with England's Ollie Chesham. But Irish centre Gary Ringrose withdrew after feeling the effects of concussion in training. Andy Farrell's son Owen will be on the replacements bench in the first ever test match to be held at the famous MCG in Melbourne, where a Lions win would wrap up the series. That's after they won the first test in Brisbane.
It's a different week again for us, which is good. At this stage of a tour, it's good to just change things up a little bit. And what we try to do is keep the whole squad together the whole way through. And we've managed our week a little bit differently. So we train on a Thursday, where we're normally used to training on a Wednesday, and we've adapted pretty well to that. And everyone's been out there today and ready for an abbreviated captain's run tomorrow. I'm ready for what is going to be a huge occasion on Saturday.
Well, England's women have announced their squad for next month's Rugby World Cup, with Zoe Aldcroft named as the captain. Scrum half, the first English